You're listening to Dear Gen Z, real stories, raw advice, and timeless lessons from the generations before us. Each week, we sit down with someone who's lived a little longer to bring you insights on life, love, purpose, and everything in between. Because sometimes the best advice doesn't come from social media. It comes from those who've been there.
Hey guys, welcome back to Dear Gen Z. I'm your host, Sean Modi, and today we're diving into something a little bit different but incredibly important, learning from people who've walked the path before us. Gen Z often hears advice like work hard, stay focused, and success will follow. But what does that actually look like in real life? What happens when you face setbacks, make tough choices, or get that moment where you realize something needs to change? Sometimes the most valuable lessons don't come from textbooks or social media clips, but from the real stories of leaders who've been through it and want to pass that wisdom forward. To help us do that, I'm joined by Nick Handrinos, who has worked at Deloitte in management for over 30 years. Nick has built an impressive career in leadership, but what's just as powerful are the lessons he's learned along the way. Lessons he believes Gen Z really needs to hear right now. Nick, thanks so much for joining us today.
That's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. To kick things off, I'd love to hear about your early years. Like what really shaped your path growing up? What experience and decisions really set the foundation for your career that you built today?
Yeah, so I'm a first generation Greek. So my parents actually came to the States from Greece, and English is actually my second language. We spoke Greek at home because that's all my parents really spoke. And the most formative thing in my early years is really two things. One is working in a family-owned pizza restaurant where the four people in our family pretty much drove the work every day, and it didn't matter what it was. And the second was sports, specifically soccer. I was obsessed with soccer. My dream was to be a professional soccer player growing up. So those were the two things. It sounds pretty cliche or stereotypical, but it's true. Those two domains are, when you ask five whys behind why I do things or how I behave or what I've accomplished, you can pretty much trace it all back to something I learned on the field, in the team environment, tough coach, etc., or frankly, the lessons of really working the restaurant business, which is a very, very hard business. So those are the early years.
Right. Yeah, and I just wanted to get into a little bit maybe of how you found your way into consulting, like what exact or not exact steps like that you've built or took to get to where you are today.
Yeah, so it actually happened a little bit by accident. It's probably the first lesson here if you're taking notes. But I was in between my first and second years of business school, and I had come from the retail industry where I was a retail buyer, and a firm was looking for an analyst to work for the summer on retail topics. And so I was an expert in that. I'd spent several years doing a lot of different things in retail in the buying office. It was a great match. And I spent a ton of time interviewing, flying out, making it to the finals, etc. And I didn't get the job offer, and I was crushed. It was sort of back to ground zero, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I almost put all my eggs in one basket relative to this internship because it was perfect. It was in Manhattan. It was for a very reputable firm. And so sort of licked my wounds, put my boots back on, started getting to work on what would happen next. And 2 weeks later, I got a call that said the intern that accepted the offer had since rescinded his acceptance, and would I be so kind as to reconsider their offer? And I didn't think twice about it. And I joined and had a great summer experience. Was very focused on trying to be successful and exceed expectations. I was fortunate enough to do that. I got an offer coming out of the summer to go back to that firm, and that's where I thought I was going to go. And then second year of business school came along. I was really looking forward to focusing on my classes and getting the most I could out of that second year without the stress of having to figure out career or job. And a buddy of mine calls me and says, hey, there's this firm, Deloitte, that's sponsoring a case competition, and we'd love to have you on a team. There's a $5,000 first prize. $5,000 is a lot of money. even split four ways. So,
especially in college.
oh my God. So yeah, I said, okay, you guys are smart guys, good guys. Let's go all in. The firm shows up on a Friday afternoon, gives you the case, and you got to present Saturday morning. So it's an all-nighter. So you Mountain Dew it, you pizza it, and you get through it. And we went all the way to the finals of that one too. And there was a lot of teams, and it was stressful. But you basically had these, single elimination presentations, and the panel, which was a combination of Deloitte partners and professors in the business school, kept evaluating. So we made it to the final two. We came in second. And we were devastated because if there's the last thing you want, it's to come in second. You'd rather would have been out in the first round because there was multiple iterations to the case that you had to respond to if you kept going. Anyway, to make a long story short, the Deloitte partners coalesced around all four of us on our team and said, look, want you to know that you guys had our vote to win. And I think the other team may have had a slightly better technical answer to some things, which is what swayed the professors. And we give them the respect of being at their campus and their schools. So we had to give it to them, but we really thought you guys were incredible. And so we're gonna take you out for dinner and get to know you a little bit better, and we'll just work on the date. So we did that. And make a long story short, I kept saying to these folks, look, I appreciate all the effort from Deloitte and all that, but I've already got an offer from another firm, et cetera, et cetera. They were clearly trying to recruit us to join Deloitte. And it got so heavy in recruiting that I kept saying to them, I don't know you guys. I worked for an entire summer for another firm. I know the partners there. I know what I'd be doing. I know the job I'm walking into. Why would you'd have to question my judgment if I said yes to you all. They actually said, well, great. You're going to have a chance to get to know us. You're going to take 2 weeks off school. We're going to buy you a ticket. You're going to go work on one of our projects with our team. And so I did. I went to Greensboro, North Carolina. I stayed in a hotel. I worked for 2 weeks in front of the client with the project teams at night, the whole 9 yards. And make a long story short, I decided to actually join Deloitte. And that was 30 years ago. So that's how I got into consulting, is that internship got the time on my resume with the right stamp of brand and the right topics that I worked on, and then took advantage of an opportunity and got with a firm that happens to be the right one for me for over 3 decades.
That's awesome. Now that's like a crazy story because I feel like everyone nowadays, at least in our generation, we always try to have our life planned out so things don't happen by chance. But when that goes to shit, we don't really know what to do sometimes. So I just wanted to get into that a little bit. Like, besides from maybe placing second in these case competitions, like what are some big challenges or setbacks that you learned maybe along the way or even on the job that you think are really, that can leave a mark on Gen Z today?
Yeah, the first is when your dream gets crushed. What do you do? When I said soccer was important to me, I'm not sure I gave it its just due. I would sleep with a soccer ball.
I've done that before. I slept with my cleats on one time.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, to this day, if I smell cut grass just the right way, my mind is on a soccer field. It's that, there's that kind of association. And it's crushing to realize that that dream comes to an end and you've got to pivot. So if I could be as trite as using one term and really mean it, like you got to really listen to this, resiliency is underrated. You got to know how to persist, man. You got to just keep going. You got to get punched in the face and you got to get back up. And you can't feel sorry for yourself. And you got to take whatever comes next. I went hard at that internship, really hard. And to hear that you're not getting it, somehow things break. They break the right way. And you're in sort of this decision tree that lefts and rights, yes and no's kind of work out somewhere. And when you get the no's that you really, really wanted yet to be yeses, you can't let that stop you from figuring out what's next and driving into it, making the most out of it. And so when I got a break in consulting, I didn't know what I was really getting into. How would I know? It's not like I worked there before, but I was the first one in, the last one out. I committed to myself I would exceed expectations at every angle, and there was no one that was going to impress them more than I was. And I was a chip on my shoulder that I think comes from a little bit of my immigrant upbringing. But that's the first thing I tell you is people have dreams and they're great because they motivate you to do special things. But you can't start feeling sorry for yourself if the world doesn't deal you the deck of cards in the hand that you want. You got to play with the hand you've got. You got to play it to the best of your ability. And even if you fold, you got to get right back up, ante into that pot, get the next hand, figure out how you're going to win. And what I've learned is the more you do that without missing a beat, the more different opportunities materialize in ways you could have never envisioned. And suddenly some good things start to happen in your life on balance. So you got to be resilient. You can't feel sorry for yourself when the plan that you had in your mind doesn't play out exactly as you thought, even if it's your deepest passion.
Right. And I just wanted to touch on that real quick because for me with college soccer, I had a couple offers to some small D3 schools, didn't commit to college for soccer because they didn't align with my academics. But one thing, at least, that I learned is that, or that I saw, I was to my dream schools. Like I had a dream to play Division I in California, and I was getting like I thought I was playing great, but I was getting shut down by school after school after school. Then I tried on the East Coast at some of the high level Division threes, got shut down school after school after school, and I tried. I was getting back up and dealing with it. Like I would be pissed for a day, but then I would use that as motivation in the gym or on the field, and it just never really worked out in the end. So when do you think it is the right time to differentiate between, all right, get back up and try again, or maybe you have to pivot away from something if it's not really not working out?
Yeah, I think you got to get to acceptance, right? There's a point at which you fought the good fight, and the facts in front of you, if you're objective about them, they tell you what the answer is. But you really got to make sure you've pushed to that level. So, first piece of advice is you don't give up on the first no and the first rejection. You keep going. But when you've got the data that a market is telling you something, and the market could be D1 soccer programs, the market could be a career job you want, the market could be a promotion or a level you think you ought to be at. Or frankly, it could be grades that you think you're going to have in a certain major and you're not able to get them where they need to be. Those are markets that are giving you information. And you got to step back and say, okay, if I took all the emotion and passion out of this, where am I? Where am I? Am I at the tip end of my trying? And do I not have enough data to make a trend line here? Or do I have 10 data points that tell me everything I'm going to know? And that's when you got to pivot. That's when you just have to say, I got to accept where I am and I got to pivot. So it's a balancing act. It's artful. I don't have an empirical answer for you or heuristic that works. I just think you need to try and persist to a point where the data tell you something. And those data are going to tell you, boy, it's great you persisted because all these doors open up that you once thought were locked. And that can happen. That's still out there. But then there are data that tell you, man, you've knocked on every door. You've knocked on every door. And it's funny, every door is telling you the same kind of story. And you're not able to figure out a pathway to open that door. You got to go knock on windows. The doors aren't for you. That's what I would say.
Right, that's real interesting. And you mentioned how you can never really give up at that first no. You have to, like you said, knock on every door. And I feel like that is kind of, a lost art in with our generation today. We will get a no, whether it's like in the classroom, we'll get like a 50 and we'll be like, oh, I got to drop out of this honors level class and go to A level. Or we will play one shitty game and be like, oh, this is too high of a level for me. So, and I kind of just wanted to get at that a little bit. Like, there are so many lessons, and especially around like work ethic, that your generation is different compared to us. You have complete different levels of work ethic compared to us. So what is that What is that wake-up call that you really feel like Gen Z needs to hear in order
Wow.
to really release
Look,
their potential?
I think you're hitting on it. Um, I'll use a one word again here to say beware. I don't like the word hack. Let's hack this.
Right.
I think there are smart ways to get from point A to point B, but if in doing that you shortchange the process, you're leaving something on the table. So let me tell you some things I have found to be true in my personal experience. I don't mean to project them onto others because I'm going to sound old fashioned, but I'd ask your audience to suspend disbelief and suspend my age and actually listen hard. The only reason I'm successful as a part 1A and a part 1B, the only reason, and I hated going through the process of learning this. 1B, we've already talked about, which is persistence. You have got to persist. Now, in persistence, make the same mistake once. Don't make it twice or three times. Make smart mistakes. What's the learning from them? Be blessed for the mistakes. Move on. Add that to your repertoire. 1A is you have to put in the work. It's as obvious and as simple as I can tell you. But I would offer to you an argument that says the very best, the most distinctive of anybody you want to pick could be athletics, it could be literature, it could be engineering, etc. They don't hack. They don't hack. Think about the interviews you'll hear about from Kobe Bryant about what he was like at the gym and when he went there and how those hours compound. Think about even some of the heuristics that are out there, the Gladwell books that talk about the 10,000 hours, etc. There is a time component to effort that's unbeatable. Unbeatable. So working hard and putting in the hours, that came from my upbringing in a restaurant where you get there at 8 a.m. to prep, you open the doors at 10:30 or 11, and you don't go home until 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And you do everything from scrubbing toilets to working the cash register to delivering food to waiting and cleaning tables to mopping the floors. And you work and you work and you work. And it's funny what happens. You become the credible guy. You become the person that people rely on. You become the person that people know will get the job done no matter how hard. There's all these compounding benefits that happen when you work hard. And so the immigrants had some knowledge, which I'm not even sure they knew they had, but that's all they knew. We're just going to work hard and save and delay gratification. And if we do that long enough, the compounding effect of that creates an insane amount of value. I found that to be the case in career. When I first started at Deloitte, I remember being in a cubicle. On the one side of me was a Harvard MBA, on the other side of me was a Columbia MBA, and I'm sitting in there, and I'm from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and a kid who spoke Greek as a first language. I said I'm gonna be fired in a year. Just the opposite happened. I received an accelerated promotion. Those two people were fired. And it had to do with the intensity with which they approached the things given to them. So I'll stop the lecture, and I know it's tired and overused, but I can't amplify the value and the compounding value of hard work. This work-life balance concept, this hack concept, I don't have a lot of examples of real people that would sit there and tell you that their success is based on those. I've got a laundry list of people I could point to, of some of the most impressive people on the planet who have done remarkable things, who say that their obsession with the thing that they were in, their hours that they put towards it, how they did it in a way where they showed up before others and left others. That story you will hear time and time again. So don't fast forward by that. Get into something you love putting the time into, persist at it, grind it, and let compounding do the rest for you.
That's really strong. And I just want to ask a hypothetical question. Let's say you were in a room and you were trying to fight for a job with people who worked just as hard as you, people that grinded just as hard as you. What else could you do or would you do to stand out in that super competitive environment that you think Gen Z could take away?
Yeah. Resourcefulness and creativity. You got to think about the problem differently. You got to turn it on its side. The masses are going to look at it the obvious, common sense, head on way. You're going to look at it in that way to make sure you don't miss the obvious, but you're going to force yourself to go, what if I turned it upside down? What did Charlie Munger tell us? He said, invert, always invert.
Right.
Right? He would tell you to instead of saying, how do I make this voyage successful? He'd say, how would I kill everybody on this ship by making it sink? And in so doing, he came up with the things that really, really mattered that you got to watch out for. Number two, you've got to be working on a network and a way of thinking where you can pull on resources it would take others way too long or that they don't even think about pulling on. So I'll embarrass them a little bit. When I'm stuck in my thinking, I call your father. Your father is one of the most brilliant minds I know at looking at something in a way no one else is looking at that's valuable. In consumer products branding, they have a concept called unique relevancy, where you've got to be relevant with what you're trying to do, but in a unique way, right? You can't be uniquely irrelevant, then you're weird, right? Because you're this irrelevant person that's doing stuff unique. And you can't be relative and common, otherwise you're a commodity. So you got to grind it out, no question. But the second part is you got to use resources and be resourceful and creative at the same time. That would be an amazing formula for success most of the time. Most of the time. And I'll tell you this, because this resonated with me and it's something I've struggled with. A lot of people I work with, Gen Z, et cetera, they like templates. They like structure. They like, fill in this section, then that section, then this section. I don't work that way at all. I like to interrogate a problem over and over and over and over again until we have breakthrough thinking or breakthrough questions, or at worst, we're prepared for all the obvious ways you could solve it. And Jeff Bezos talks about this. He says, I don't know where we're going when we're trying to solve something innovatively. I just know we have to spend the time together going through the process, and we'll get to where we need to get to. But that's not a template. It's not a predefined destination. And you got to be patient with me while we go, 6 miles down this road and figure out it's not going to take us to where we got to go. We got to go back 4 miles and take the right turn we should have taken. And then we'll go 2 miles down there and come back. That can be frustrating. And I've seen some of the younger folks that I work with want something a little bit more orchestrated and organized. And I think the real breakthroughs don't happen that way.
Right, because you got to get creative and resourceful, like you said earlier.
I think so. You got to be uniquely relevant. You can't be on Mars. You got to be on Earth. But if you're on Earth, how are you going to be someone that stands out? As you said, if you have a bunch of killers that are really willing to work hard, you got to then figure out, well, why is our hard work going to look different in a way that's valuable to a market? Well, that's the answer. You're going to be uniquely relevant. Okay, well, it's your job to go discover what does that mean. And you better have a network of resources you can call on to stimulate thinking in a way that's outside of the way you look at things. I think you've got to have a way of questioning that's different than the obvious questions. Again, whether it's you subscribe to Munger's inversion approach or Bezos's two-door approach, where he talks about some decisions are easy to go in and out of, so don't stress on those too much. Some are one ways that are very expensive to come back. Pay a lot of attention to those decisions. These types of mental models help you as you're trying to really win.
All right. That's awesome. Now we're running out of time for today's episode, but as always, I just wanted to leave the audience with, what is your biggest piece of advice for Gen Z listening right now?
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of hacks to remarkable success. There may be hacks to common success. There may be hacks to average performance. Truly remarkable performance has some, I think, time-tested values and principles associated with it. And I don't see enough reinforcement of that in the value system of some generations out there. And I don't want to pick on people or be too pejorative or generalized in what I'm saying. But if I could ask your audience to just remember 2 or 3 things, it's the hard work is the hack. The shortcut is not the hack. The persistence is required. And in that, you've got to expect failure, and you got to be able to deal with it and not let it crush you. And 3, you got to be objective with the data the market tells you. The market could be anything, right? It's not just the stock market or the labor market or the career market. It's whatever market you tend to want to play in to win. It has rules, and those rules will give you feedback, and you got to persist deep enough to understand what those rules are telling you. And once you do, work hard at it, persist, and again, the compounding effect will give you success.
That's powerful. Well, guys, that's a wrap for today's episode of Dear Gen Z. I hope this conversation really gave you some perspective on what it takes to build a foundation, overcome challenges, and make the most of opportunities that come your way. Huge thanks to Nick for sharing his story and the lessons he's learned along the way. I know there's a lot that Gen Z can take away from it because I took a lot away myself. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow the podcast, share it with a friend who could use a little inspiration, and leave a review. It really helps us grow the community. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.